Hello history buffs and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most chaotic, influential and misunderstood events in world history, the French Revolution. It began on May 5, 1789, and it became the blueprint for countless revolutions to come. The idea of the common people rising up and taking control of their country was incredibly inspiring for the oppressed everywhere. But how smooth was it really? And did it actually bring about a new era of freedom? As we'll see, overthrowing an entire society is always a messy business. Revolutions don't just happen overnight, and France in 1789 was a powder keg waiting to explode. Several factors were pushing the lower classes to their breaking point. First, let's talk money. France's finances were in shambles. One hugely unpopular expense was their support for the American War of Independence. While French peasants were starving, the crown sent 1.3 billion livres and 12,000 troops to help the Americans fight England. As if that wasn't bad enough, the ruling class was living it up. The nobility seemed completely out of touch with the grim reality faced by most of the country, and that reality was dire. While the rich feasted, the peasant class, which made up 80% of the population, was suffering from a series of bad harvests. This led to severe shortages of almost every essential food. The social system itself was fundamentally broken. Known as the Ancien Regime, it was a holdover from the Middle Ages. It divided society into three classes. Our estates, the massive peasant class at the bottom, the nobility in the middle, and the clergy at the top. The craziest part? Only the peasant class had to pay taxes. The king was considered to exist outside this system entirely, an absolute monarch with divine rights. At the same time, new ideas were spreading like wildfire. Thinkers of the Enlightenment, like Rousseau and Voltaire, were writing about radical concepts like personal happiness, civil liberties, and the rights of man. These ideas resonated deeply with the merchants, artisans, and educated members of the lower classes, who were growing hungry for change. And then there was Marie Antoinette. Stories of her extravagant parties and opulent lifestyle made her the face of the monarchy's excess. She was seen as greedy, frivolous, and clueless about her people's suffering, earning her the infamous nickname Madame Deficit. Finally, all this simmering resentment boiled over. On July 14, 1789, revolutionaries stormed the Bastille, a massive stone prison in Paris. They weren't just freeing prisoners. They were after the gunpowder stored inside. They easily overran the fortress, marking the symbolic start of the revolution. Now armed and emboldened, the people marched on the Palace of Versailles, the opulent home of the royal family. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were still largely ignorant of how bad things had gotten. The revolutionaries captured the royal family and forced them back to Paris to stand trial. As news spread, nobles across France began fleeing the country in droves. Those who stayed behind had their lands seized and their titles stripped. Many were killed by angry mobs, even after being rebranded as average citizens. And this brings us to an enduring symbol of the revolution: the guillotine. It was quickly put to use, becoming the standard tool for capital punishment. Its most famous victims, of course, were King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. After some deliberation, the new revolutionary courts charged them both with high treason and sentenced them to death. Louis was beheaded in January 1793, and Marie Antoinette followed in October of the same year. Both executions were huge public spectacles held in the Place de la Concorde in Paris. As a final symbolic gesture, when the Bastille was torn down, many of its stones were used to build the Pont de la Concorde bridge, leading right to the new National Assembly. With the king and queen gone, the revolution entered its darkest phase, known as the Reign of Terror. From roughly 1791 to 1794, France descended into brutal infighting between various factions of royalists and revolutionaries. It was a period of extreme paranoia and violence. An estimated 25,000 people were officially executed, and many more were killed in street massacres. Even the revolutionaries couldn't agree with each other. Let's look at some of the key players. First, Marquis de Lafayette. You might know him as a hero of the American Revolution, but in France, he was a staunch royalist and led the Royalist National Guard, putting him at odds with the main revolutionary movement. Then there was Jean-Paul Marat, one of the most radical voices of the revolution. He supported the mass killings during the Reign of Terror, which made him an extremist even among his allies. In 1793, he was famously murdered in his bathtub by Charlotte Corday, a fellow revolutionary who believed Marat's calls for violence had gone too far. Marat's ally, Maximilien Robespierre, was another primary leader. He became the face of the terror, sending over 17,000 people to the guillotine. Eventually, his own allies turned on him. Feared and distrusted, Robespierre himself was declared an enemy of the revolution and was executed in 1794. Amidst all this chaos, new symbols for France emerged. The old royal fleur-de-lis was out. In its place rose Marianne, a goddess of liberty who represented resistance against the monarchy. You can still see her image on statues and old coins across France. The French flag also got its modern design. The blue and red were the colors of Paris, worn by the militia who stormed the Bastille. White, the ancient color of France, was added in the middle to create the tricolor we know today. But the victory was short-lived. The First Republic of France, born from all this bloodshed, would last only 10 years before falling back into totalitarianism. This brings us to a man who, for a time, was a champion of the revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte. He rose quickly through the ranks of the Revolutionary Army, proving his loyalty by crushing royalist uprisings. However, by the time Napoleon became commander of the army, his ambitions had shifted. In 1799 he staged a coup d'état, seizing total power. As emperor, Napoleon launched a series of military campaigns known as the Napoleonic Wars, fighting against Britain, Russia, and other European powers. These wars dramatically reshaped the map and balance of power in Europe for a century. After more than a decade of conquest, Napoleon was finally defeated by a coalition of European nations at the famous Battle of Waterloo in 1815. He returned to Paris. He found the French people had once again turned against their absolute ruler. He tried to flee but was captured by the British and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena. So what happened to France? After Napoleon's defeat, the foreign powers reinstated the French monarchy. But the revolutionary spirit was not dead. In 1830, the people revolted again in the July Revolution. France would endure a vicious cycle of revolutions, coups, and invasions throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries. It wasn't until after World War II that the Republic model finally stabilized, creating the France we know today. The French Revolution was a messy, violent, and complex decade that didn't immediately achieve its goals. But its ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity echoed across the globe, inspiring change and challenging the old world order in ways that still impact us all. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through revolutionary France interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments what historical event you want us to cover next. See you in the next video.